Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we are doing the midweek meta deck, and the deck we are playing is Tong Liu's Golden Dragon Cup winning deck from the weekend just gone. So, what is this deck doing? Well, it's kind of a black base that reminds me a little bit of Death Shadow, but it's got a whole lot of other stuff going on at the same time too. So we have the sort of standard Shadow stuff of the Grief Reanimate package has become pretty sort of run-of-the-mill for the Shadow decks now. And we've got the Baleful Strix as well, along with Hymns of Tourach and cantrips. All this stuff looks Death Shadowy, but that's where we sort of part ways, because we've got some different threats going on here. So we do have the Murktide Regent, to be fair, but then we are much more heavily into control, using Hullbreacher and Faerie Mastermind as our sort of win conditions here, alongside obviously the Grixis and the Murktides. And we have a single Kolaghan's command here to hit our opponents. So we've got a whole bunch of 2-for-1s in the form of Kolaghan's command and all these Hymns of Tourach and these Baleful Strixes, and we can hardcast Grixis too. So my initial thoughts when looking at this deck is it's a little bit light on win conditions in the main deck, but we have a lot of cantrips to find them, and we have a decent amount of ways of controlling the board between 2 Fatal Pushes, these 2 Snuff Outs, counter magic in the form of Force of Will and Daze. Baleful Strix can certainly hold the fort down for a while, and if our opponent plays anything good, we can reanimate it ourselves. On top of this, splashing red for just this and sideboard cards, we are also running 4 Wastelands in the sideboard here. Our red splash is not what you would call very deep here. We've got the 1 Volcanic Island and the 1 Badlands. And then we've got 4 Underground Sea. So we don't have room for a Mystic Sanctuary here, but I don't think that's a problem really. We're sort of a control deck of sorts. We're not aiming to control the game forever, but we're aiming to sort of shut down the early game and then plonk something that can win the game, or the Grief Disruption with a sort of scam package is kind of how we're looking to win the game here. And then eventually sort of grind in with Kolaghan's command. And if we can pair our Faerie Mastermind with our Hullbreacher, we can start getting some treasures every time we make them draw cards on their turn, and hopefully run away with the game a little bit that way. Also, we're running a new card in the main deck here, so that's one of the reasons I picked this one, because new cards are what you all want to see, right? So let's try this Faerie Mastermind out. Sideboard-wise, we have another new card in Anoint with Affliction. This is an instant, 2 mana, exile target creature if its mana value 3 or less. If your opponent's got a bunch of poison counters, it can hit anything. But generally, you'll just bring this in as a way of exile removal on a creature. So pretty good against things like Uro, which keep coming back, as well as just a relatively cheap removal spell that we can throw at some stuff. Got some other tools here. We've got a Singleton Opposition Agent and 2 Plague Engineers. So these are quite powerful cards for certain matchups where you can obviously Plague Engineer for things like Elves and Goblins is going to do a lot of work, and Opposition Agent for decks that are relying on lots of tutors, like the Epic Storm type stuff, where they've got Infernal Tutor and Wishful Talismans, as well as just things like Natural Order, Green Sun Zenith. We can sort of hit those too. We've got Nasty Pyro Veils for the slightly slower games, where this is really going to cause our blue opponents a bit of annoyance. We've got a Force of Negation to add to our counter suite for when we need to be countering stuff that's going to be winning the game before we can start disrupting them with hymns and things. No Thoughtseize in this deck as well, which is also interesting, but we do have the Grease, which is kind of acting like our Thoughtseize. We got 1 Surgical Extraction for some graveyard hate, alongside a Grafdigger's Cage and a Nile Spellbomb. We have 2 Meltdowns for, your 8 cast, Painter, that sort of jam. And we have 3 Pyroblasts. So we're sort of making use of the red cards in the sideboard more. So Meltdown is a very powerful tool that can kind of say no to certain archetypes quite handily. And a Pyroblast is going to let us fight against blue decks and make sure we can force through our 2-for-1s or whatever. And we can trade out our our interaction that costs us 2 cards and replace it with interaction that only costs us 1 card. And we're going to be a little more streamlined. And then when we start fighting with all our 2-for-1s in Hymns of Tourach, Kolaghan's command, Baleful Strix, that sort of thing, it should hopefully pan out. So this is the deck. It's a little bit control-y. Certain tempo elements as well, because we've got Dazes in as well, which isn't really a control card. So we're hoping to scam people sometimes, grind out people other times. Feels like there's a lot of avenues, and I'm curious to see how this one plays out. So before we jump into this league with Tong Liu's deck, let me just say, like, comment, subscribe. These are free ways of helping me out. And if you're in a position where you can financially help me out, I have a Patreon, and I also have YouTube membership that you can get on. Or you can join the Discord below and get in touch with me personally if you'd like to do a donation deck, and we can discuss that. Alright, plug over, we're done with. Let's jump into some Legacy with this pretty funky looking deck. We're on the play for round 1, and our opening hand is pretty awkward. If this was a black source, I'd be down for this, but it's not. So I think we have to mulligan this one. Okay, what does our hand do here? We can grief into him to Tourach with Daze backup. That seems pretty strong. Do we want to 2-for-1 ourselves here? I think we do. Right, and we'll put back the... If we grief our opponent on turn 1 though, what are we doing? Because we're going to have to pitch a black card to, and I'd rather not pitch this Baleful Strix. I'm going to use this to recoup the loss advantage from the grief. It's interesting. Maybe we get rid of the Brainstorm? No, it should just be the grief, right? Let's just get rid of the grief. We can find another grief if we need to. I don't think we have the black cards to pitch. We can start the game out with a Scalding Tarn to dodge Wasteland, and this allows us to play the Daze if we need to in an emergency. This seems fine. Right, and there's a Saga from our opponent on turn 1. Understood. A Lotus Petal. We will not try and Daze this. We could be looking at anything from Painter to 8 cast, or Saga Storm. Torpor Orb. Do I care about Torpor Orb? It shuts down our Baleful Strix, and it shuts down our... But I think the problem with letting this Torpor Orb resolve is that our opponent's probably on Dreadnought, and we don't really deal with Dreadnought amazingly with our hand right now, so let's crack this. We do have a red spell in our deck. Are we supposed to get a Badlands here so we can cast our spells if we draw them? But if we want to cast a Daze, we need to go and get the Volcanic here. Right, so we play out this Volcanic. I think I'm going to cast this Brainstorm. Alright, so we have some options here about what we want to do. Another Daze is nice. We're not going to be casting this anytime soon, so I think we'll put the him and then the push on top, and we'll draw them. So I normally wouldn't be too worried about something like a Torpor Orb, but the fact is our opponent is probably going to be using this Torpor Orb to do unfair things with Fraction Dreadnoughts. And if we get rid of this, it just sort of stops the flow of Dreadnoughts. So we're sort of getting rid of it as an enabler. I'm going to play out this Underground Sea, so we have the ability to Daze and Fatal Push. Next turn, we can cast the Baleful Strix. We're going to need to find another black source to cast at him, but we have plenty of action in the meantime anyway. It's probably just going to be a Soul Land. Okay, no Soul Land. That's good. Painter's Servant. Okay. So this looks like... let's just kill this guy now while it's here. Say no. So they named black so it dodged Snuff Out. So our opponent's deck looks like the Painter Dreadnought deck that I've seen floating around a little bit. So we need blue from this, black from this. Hopefully we'll draw a blue card. We did not draw a blue card. We did draw a Wasteland, which can be good for the next turn. So this Saga is going to find them potentially a Grindstone. Sure, so they're floating the mana. This might be mana that gets put into an Urza Saga this turn. We don't know just yet. We could see something like a Pithing Needle to like shut down potential Wastelands, because obviously quite all in on these Sagas. But I think it's probably going to be the Grindstone. Oh, Mox Opal. Okay, so they're struggling for mana. That's important to know. There's a Lotus Petal. We'll let that happen. We want to counter the thing that use multiple cards to cast. So obviously the Lotus Petal. Okay, we don't really care about Shadow Spear. We can take one hit from the guy. If we can draw Kolaghan's command, we'll be in a good shape. Oswald Fiddlebender. We can force them to crack the Lotus Petal, or we can just Force of Will this guy. I think we're going to Force of Will this. So our opponent is playing a version of a deck that I've played quite a bit on this channel, the Mono White Painter. They are probably in the Dreadnought phase of things. Looking at what they have on display right now, the Torpor Orb is a bit of a giveaway. Okay, so over to us. I think we want to cast the thing that draws us a card first, so we get maximum information about what we're doing with our turn. I don't think many things are going to be better than just Wasteland our opponent's land here, though. I do love Wasteland people. Magic was meant to be played. Wastelands. Not so much Strip Mine, though. Not a fan of that one back in the day. Alright, so our opponent does have access to mana from their Mox Opal and their Lotus Petal. But if they crack their Lotus Petal, their Mox Opal gets turned off. So, Skrell, Defector Mine, sure. Our opponent's got 2 cards in hand. It'd be a good time to draw a black source. Okay, I guess we're fishing for a black source with this Ponder. We found a black source. We also found a Faerie Mastermind. Is that important to us? I don't think so. I think it's more important to get both of these cards out of our opponent's hand right now. As much as I would like this other threat and to play with a new card, we're just going to get ourselves another Underground Sea here. We don't have basics in our deck. We only have one basic in our deck, right? We don't have a swamp. So we're just going to get this Underground Sea. Not that we can fetch off this anyway, but just in general for how our mana base is configured. I forgot to mention that in the deck. We're going to get an Underground Sea. We will strip our opponent's hand of cards. Another Skrelv and an Oswald. So the Skrelv can start protecting other things they play, and it is an artifact, so they can use their petal without it turning off their Mox. It's going to be a matchup where Meltdown's going to be pretty useful. They're going to put the Shadow Spear onto their Skrelv. Sure. If they attack, we trade. Oh wow, we are attacking. Sure. So opponent's down to like no resources here. And they're back down to cracking the Lotus Petal will cost them their Mox. We're going to keep up black mana because we're going to keep up the Underground Sea because our only red spell main deck is the Kolaghan's Command, which we need 3 mana to cast anyway, whereas we have plenty of black spells we might want to cast. So we're going to keep this Polluted Delta in hand for the purposes of Brainstorm. We could just play it out now, but might as well keep it in hand. It's probably going to be using to fetch and shuffle away a Brainstorm if we get to that sort of thing. A Ponder. So we will cast the Ponder off of this because we can fetch wherever we need to with the other one. Grief him to Tourach, Reanimate. Interesting. We don't really want this him, so we'll put that on the bottom. I'm not that bothered by this Reanimate, so put that next, and then we'll put the Grief. And we will not shuffle our library. So we could have reanimated our Baleful Strix if we wanted to. I think we're better off just getting a little bit of damage in here, casting our Grief. If we feel like Reanimate is something we're going to want, we can always go and fetch. We can always keep it now. But I don't think just fetching a Reanimate to then getting the Reanimate to immediately get our Baleful Strix is necessarily where we want to be. We could get our opponent's Oswald. I don't think that's going to do anything. We get our opponent's Skrelv. Given this Saga, I'm more inclined to take another Baleful Strix by keeping the Reanimate, so I'm not going to shuffle yet. I'm going to draw. And our opponent doesn't have any card in hand, so the Grief isn't looking amazing, but it is an increasing clock. I think we're going to crack this because we've got him to Tourach on top of our library. So we're going to get another Underground Sea. We will reanimate our Baleful Strix. And we drew another Baleful Strix, I guess 4 of a kind. Black, blue. Just keep drawing cards. Another Reanimate. Okay. I don't think we want to reanimate an Oswald. We don't have any artifacts we can find. And we don't have white mana to activate the Oswald anyway. We definitely don't reanimate the Painter because that gives them access to their win condition. I guess we're just going to hold this reanimate up. So we can trade with another Saga token using a Baleful Strix. And then draw some more cards. They can use the Mox and the Plains so they don't have to take damage for the Saga. A Torpor Orb. A little bit late, I would say. Glad we counted that Torpor Orb with the amount of cards we've drawn with these Strixes. Okay, so we have a Wasteland. We're going to play this Wasteland. We're going to get rid of this as a Saga. So they're going to make a token in response. That's fine. They will have a Shadow Spear which can gain them a bunch of life. We're going to attack with 2 guys. In case one of our guys gets killed by something, I'd like to be able to block this with Death Touch. So let's just cast this. It's just a 3/4 Menace guy at this point. But a 3/4 Menace guy is, a 3/2 Menace guy is fine on this board. Like, we're going to lose a little bit in this race because of the Shadow Spear, but we get to recoup that over turns because we'll remove the thing they have in play. If we can find a Brainstorm, we can put back these cards that are now looking a bit mediocre. If we can draw one of Kolaghan's Command, we can probably put this game away. Having to pay 2 life to equip this is pretty good for us as well. One of these lads gets underneath. Sure. So we take a bit of damage, they gain a bit of life. And then they play another Oswald, or is this a Painter? Could be a Canonist. It's another thing that's quite common in these lists. Or it could be a Dreadnought. Just a Canonist, sure. A Ponder. Pretty happy to see this. See if we can find something useful here. We've got a Snuff Out. Don't really want the rest of these cards, though. I think we're going to just any order and shuffle. Right, so we have a fetch land for when we get a Brainstorm going. That's nice. How many guys do we attack with here? Definitely attack with a Grief. It's going to be a 3-power guy. I don't think we're going to win by not attacking. So I think we're going to bash in for 5 here. Our opponent's kind of priced into equipping and attacking here because otherwise they're losing. So they're just going to be trading off with a Strix. They're going to gain a few life. These Ancient Tombs are pretty bad. We're in a pretty much a straight up race here. Glad they haven't found any Dreadnoughts, which must be in their deck if they got 2 Torpor Orbs. Like maybe one of Torpor Orb could be an Oswald target, but having 2 is a definite nod to the Dreadnought. Oh, interesting. I didn't attack with it. 3, 4, 5. So I have 6 damage. So Kolaghan's Command is lethal here. Okay, we did not draw Kolaghan's Command. This guy has Menace, so that's not really going to get them anywhere. Need 2 creatures to block this one. I have definitely forgotten about the Menace on Grief before. It's easily done. So I don't think we want to reanimate right now. I think we're just keeping our cards in hand here. So this is going to come in this time. We will trade off here. We're going to gain 2 life. So this means that they're not dead on our swing. Unless we draw a Kolaghan's Command. Or they activate this Ancient Tomb for mana. Affliction Dreadnought is a little bit scary at this point, to be honest. A Grindstone, that's fine. Does give them some draws that might be able to kill us. But we need to get them low enough that the Ancient Tomb can't activate. What have we got here? That's not a Brainstorm, is it? So let's go to attacks. Attack with creatures. This will put our opponent to 2. So these are shut off, so they have 2 3 mana. So not really sure what they can draw here. I don't think we need to play this. They're unlikely to be able to kill all of our guys. Let's just pass a turn, give our opponent the representing hardcast Force of Will stare down. Murktide Gardens, okay. That's the end of that chapter. Again, the Murktide Gardens confirms my suspicion of Affliction Dreadnoughts. So, what do we have here? 2 Meltdowns going to be very good. That's an easy one. Opposition Agent, probably pretty good. Anoint with Affliction, pretty good. Snuff Out is going to be an odd one. Sometimes it's going to be good, sometimes it's going to be pretty bad. I don't really like Daze on the play here. Sorry, on the draw, because our opponent's got Soul Lands and fast mana, so we're just going to end up getting these snowballing out a bit too quickly. I don't think we want to be leveraging too much into these Reanimates, because our opponent's shown us Torpor Orb as well already. So are we supposed to be trimming a Grief for those purposes? Like, we can always just play a Grief as an early 3-2. We do have Meltdowns and things to get back in the game. In terms of graveyard stuff, I don't think that's necessary. Grafdigger's Cage has some interesting text though. Because Grafdigger's Cage stops our opponent from being able to go and find a Affliction Dreadnought from the Urza Saga. But it is something that gets caught by our Meltdown. So I don't think we want it for this matchup really. We've got a bunch of removal. We've got Meltdowns. Yeah, this seems fine. Do we want to bring in these Plague Engineers? What would they be naming? They can trade with a Dreadnought, but it's not great. We didn't really see much that these could kill. I don't think that's worth it. Then we're just going to submit like this. And get ourselves some Meltdown action from our 8 cantrips to find it, hopefully. We've also got the Baleful Strix, which can dig us nicely. They do shut down quite a lot of our card advantage if they get the Torpor Orb into play. What does our hand do? Not cast its spells. So I think we can mulligan this one. This has a Meltdown and a Force of Will. I would like some more cantrips. We've got 2 draws to find something. So I think we will keep this. And we're probably getting rid of the Opposition Agent here. Because Kolaghan's Command is just very strong in this matchup at 3. And we are going to be fetching red because of the Meltdown. So, let's see. Okay, as a Saga, this is representing a potential turn 3 Grindstone kill. So we will need to use some counter magic somewhere along the lines. This could just be an Urza Saga game too. An Underground Sea. Not unhappy to see that one. Let's throw it down. We've got a Force of Will. So these decks, because they got the Mycosynth Gardens, the lists I've seen haven't been running Wasteland, which is why I'm happy to run out the sea instead of the Polluted Delta. That's basic plains. A Hushbringer. Do we care about Hushbringer? Do we care about? Interesting. I think we do, because we're trying to get this Baleful Strix into play. So let's just say no to this one, because they can just go and get Affliction Dreadnought next turn as well, which is pretty bad for us. There's a Mox. And it's back over to us. So this is probably better off getting us a Badlands, because we have black for him to Tourach then. So we're going to get the Badlands, and we're going to play out our Strix here. So this needs to be black, and this needs to be blue. Play this guy out while we can get the cards. A Snuff Out. Sure, so a bit of free removal is pretty handy. We've got a Meltdown, which can hopefully clean up a lot of their board in the near future. And we're all good, hopefully. I like the position we're in anyway. Okay, so they're floating off of this. They could go and get a Lotus Petal if they want to accelerate themselves out a little bit mana-wise. A Grindstone. Okay. So they could play a Painter here, but they're not going to have the mana to activate it unless they've got more artifact mana. In which case we can lose the game this turn. 3 mana. Okay. No. 2 mana. Nope. A Torpor Orb. Sure. I'm going to play a Phyrexian Dreadnought. Sure, we have 2 answers for this in our hand right now. So, not unhappy about the situation. They are holding open this Mox Opal though. So we can do a Meltdown for 1, which will blow up 3 of their permanents. That seems fine. Or we can, if we're fatal pushing this, we're not really doing anything else. And then we just Meltdown for a lot of value here. Let's just take out 3 of their permanents. Okay. So we've got Snuff Outs. Snuff Outs not great against Painter, but good against their non-Painter cards. I wish we hadn't over Force of Will the Hushbringer if I knew I was drawing on these Snuff Outs, but obviously I didn't know that we were doing that. So an Ancient Tomb. So our opponent's got some mana over there. If we can draw a land. Okay, we did not draw a land. We got removal spells though. And a very slow clock. If we can draw a land, we can hold up Hullbreacher or Kolaghan's Command. And what we can do is if they cast a Affliction Dreadnought, we can blow up the Torpor Orb on the stack. Oswald Fiddlebender, sure. I think we're going to Fatal Push this guy now. Just say no. It's not a thing we want them to untap with. We may as well use our mana because we might not be using it next turn for things if we draw a land. Did not draw a land, but we did draw a Ponder. We don't have only 1 mana red spells we want to cast here, but we have to use our blue from the Underground Sea. We're looking for a land and some more action, I guess. That's pretty good. So put Wasteland, then the Tarn, because we want that next turn, and then the Wasteland. We'll not shuffle. So we'll play out this Wasteland. We have a choice here. We can strip away their white mana, or we can strip away their raw amount of mana. That's actually an interesting... I don't think we want the Gardens here, though. I don't think that's worth hitting. I think we'll take out their raw amount of mana because they already have a basic that's white. We don't want them to be able to play Painter and activate it in one... and activate Grindstone. That's a 6 mana play to play Painter, Grindstone, and activate. So we want to keep them away from 6 mana. Sure. If we can untap, I think we're okay-ish. Because we're going to have a bigger clock, or we're going to have something that really messes their day up. We can get a nice 2-for-1 with this Kolaghan's Command if we want to. I'm relatively keen on the Wasteland, but I think we will just snap the Hullbreacher off to try and get this game over and done with. This is going to be a Path to Exile on our Swords to Plowshares on our guy, maybe. 1, 2. March of the Otherworldly Light, perhaps. So I have to tap the Mycosynth Gardens if they want to do this. It could be Aganjo Castle, whatever that's called, the relatively new one that shoots something for 4. It clearly had something they were thinking about there. Skrelv Defector Might. We don't care about this. Our opponent has some sort of instant in their hand. That was the impression they gave me just now. I think we'll fire off one of these for free on this guy. We're just keeping their board clean. Obviously, if we don't kill that, it makes it harder for us to get other things. I think I want to draw the Wasteland, so I'm not going to crack this fetch and play the guy. I know I said I kind of wanted to get the game over and done with, but I think just Wasteland our opponent back into the dirt is good. Just take out the Ancient Tombs, take out their raw amount of mana so they can't do the combo all in one turn. It gives us more chances and opportunities to interact with whatever they're doing. What we want is our opponent to play a Phyrexian Dreadnought here. And we can blow up Torpor, make him discard a card and get a really nice 3-for-1. No, a Mox Opal, sure. Have to imagine this is the card they drew this turn. Otherwise, might have played it. Okay, a Painter's Servant. Do we care about Painter's Servant right now? I don't think so. This is going to name black, but we're going to blow it up with this anyway, so we just let this come in. So this switches off our Snuff Out. In a turn, we're going to make the Hullbreacher. We're going to get an Underground Sea here. I'm going to cast Hullbreacher. Blue, blue, black. And then we're pressuring with a lot more damage this time. It would be very greedy to cast a Ponder here. I'm not going to be that greedy. So I think in our opponent's draw step, we're going to make them discard and kill their Painter's Servant. They draw an instant. They're copying their Painter, sure. This will not be black, so we can stuff this one out. What did they discard? A Razor Verge Thicket. Okay, green mana. That's probably just to cast the activate ability of Haywire Might, I'd imagine. Okay, let's cast our Ponder. Force of Will, Opposition Agent, Wasteland. I do like Wasteland in people, as we very well know. We don't really have the resources for this Force of Will. So if we leave this Force of Will on top, we basically are trying to win with what we have in play now. How likely do we think it is we win with the... I think we just any order and shuffle here. Okay, we drew the worst card of those three back again. Alright, let's Wasteland this Ancient Denaway. Let's go to attacks. We can Snuff Out now. And that turns off the Mox Opal. Sure. So we've got 2-turn clock here. If we can draw a blue card, we can have a Force of Will. But our opponent has one white mana available here. A Grindstone. Okay. Need to find a Painter and the mana to activate the Grindstone. So I'm going to play Painter into... Oh, what have we got here? Anything spicy we can get with this? No, I think it's a 2-turn clock anyway. So this doesn't actually make any impact on the game. Alright. So our opponent has got one draw step to draw. They need 2 cards to win, so I'm not really sure how they stop it. They could have a removal spell and kill the Hullbreacher and buy themselves 2 more draw steps. A Fiddlebender, sure. This can chump block the... Well, not chump, it can actually trade with the Hullbreacher. We can also just... We should have reanimated the Phyrexian Dreadnought, actually. Sure. We'll just attack with these guys. And then we're going to reanimate their Dreadnought like we should have done last turn. We've given our opponent 1 draw step by forgetting about their Dreadnought and the fact that they have a Torpor Orb. We're not going to play the Murktide because we can keep the Force of Will up. So we have Force of Will, Phyrexian Dreadnought. Feel good. I think these decks are relatively easy to pick apart because they're trying to assemble 2 different A plus B combos, which means sometimes they'll have A without B. So if you can smash the right pieces, you can keep them off balance long enough to take over a game. So we are 1-0. Let's go to round 2. We're on the play for round 2. We have some interaction here. We got reasonable interaction, I guess, but we're not really committing to the board. But again, our deck doesn't really do that very much. So I think we do keep this one. We lead out on the plains, and then we can pivot into our swamp if we need it, or we can wasteland our opponent. We've got a Daze that we can use. Seems okay. Right, our opponent has played a Great Furnace. This is most likely some sort of painter deck. I believe it's correct to wasteland here. Now, this could have been a bait to try and get an Urza Saga through. They floated the red because they probably have a Pyroblast, or at least want us to think they have a Pyroblast, so they can hit a cantrip. But we just want to put cards in our graveyard and then jam a Murktide when the time comes, although this threat is going to be pretty weak in this matchup because of all the Pyroblasts. A Wooded Foothills, so it could be red-green Painter, which usually splashes green for the Haywire Might activations as well as yeah, haywire my activations, as well as like Once Upon a Time, and sometimes Mints can boo out of the sideboard. So have to keep an eye on those things. So we have a hardcast Daze available to us right now. We also have a Snuff Out if they play a creature we want to deal with. A Plateau. Okay, Great Furnace, Plateau. So we're probably looking at more like a Strawberry Shortcake build, which is a much quicker... Okay, we got an Ethersworn Canonist. Do I care about Ethersworn Canonist? Genuinely. We have an option here of casting a Daze for free, which I think is worth doing. Not for free, but without having to lose a land for it. So I think we're just going to do this. This also makes our cantrips really bad, so getting rid of this is pretty reasonable. Alright, let's Simian Spirit Guide in to Pyroblast this. Oh, no, just, sorry, the Simian Spirit Guide in to pay, that's fine. So we can snuff this out whenever we want. Although, this could be a bait spell for painters and things. Okay, we have a Force of Will, so we can use the Snuff Out if we need to. We also have the Hullbreacher. So we've got a decent chunk of options here. And the Snuff Out means that we can play around the Sworn Canonist ability. Alright, so we got... yeah, the Saga ticking up. Red and 1. Goblin Engineer. Do we want to counterspell Goblin Engineer? So this is going to put a painter in the graveyard, and the Ezra Saga is going to get the Grindstone. So I think we do counterspell this. Hold on, no, we want to kill this first. So then we can play the Hullbreacher as well. So we're aiming to try and play Hullbreacher into Murktide. Do we want to show our opponent red mana? I think we should, purely because we're going to want to cast our Kolaghan's Command matchup if we draw it. I was hoping to maybe snag a Fable of the Mirrorbreaker under a Hullbreacher. That would have been nice. A Wasteland here would be great. Not a Wasteland. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we can cast a Murktide this turn. Let's go and get ourselves a little Murktide Regent. Just a 2-mana 6/6 flyer. Why not? So we're representing a 2-turn clock now. We'd love to draw a Kolaghan's Command or something like that. Though sometimes making your opponent discard is a bit awkward in the Painted Mirror if they've got like goblins and stuff that can bring things back. Because sometimes they also run top-end stuff that they can bring. Not so much at the moment in online Magic, but in paper they have Chaos Defiler, which isn't out yet. Ooh, a Lion's Eye Diamond. Okay, we could be dead this turn. They have the 6 mana required to do the thing. Let's see. A Lightning Bolt on that guy. Okay. A Grindstone. Sure, they got Painter to go with it? They do not. Okay. Some action, please. This is action. I will take this. We're going to get another Underground Sea here. So let's cast our Grief. Let's see what you're working with, opponent. We are very much saying we don't have anything here because we're hellbent, but we do get at least peek at our opponent's hand. If our opponent's top card of their library is Painter's Servant, we will just lose the game, and there's not really anything we can do about that, sadly. We got here Goblin Engineer is too slow. Pyroblast is pretty good at taking out our Murktide. So if we hit them for 6 this turn... So if they draw a Soul Land this turn... If they draw a Soul Land this turn, they can play Karn off of 2 Soul Lands. And then activate Karn in response, crack this and this, and that's still not enough mana, right? That's only 4 mana and they need 5. So I think the correct pick here is Pyroblast and make sure the game ends as soon as possible. Interesting, Lightning Bolt with the Hullbreacher rather than Karning here. I guess they could Karn into Ensnaring Bridge if they draw a land. That's also a bit of an issue for us, perhaps. Or maybe that was an error as well. But if we hit them for 6 and they take 4, then they're on 6 life. Maybe we're supposed to take the Karn there. Because we're guaranteed to get our 6 points of damage in this turn. But then that's a 4-turn clock. And I think our opponent with 4 turns with Goblin Engineer... well, if we take one of these instead, our opponent has either Karn or Goblin Engineer to win in 4 turns. And I think they can just do that quite easily. So I think it is right to say this game has only got 1 more draw step for you instead of giving them multiple draw steps and leaving them with the Pyroblast. Yeah, Okay. I'm happy with that play. Definitely lines we can get punished, but if we take the... Yeah. I think it either has to be the Khan or the Pyroblast, and the Pyroblast... Okay. Okay, like I said, if the top card of their library is Painter's Servant, they kill us. We don't have anything that can deal with this, so we are just dead. We will not let them see our deck. Alright, I feel we got pretty unlucky. They had one draw step to find a thing, and they found it. Sometimes that happens, though. I would like Meltdowns. I would like Plague Engineers for the Goblins. Opposition Agent is good. Anoint with Affliction is good. Sage of Extraction is also good. We've got a lot of tools here that are nice. Our Force of Wills are not nice. Reanimate is fine, but if we're bringing in Grafdigger's Cage and stuff, maybe we don't want the Reanimates. We've just got these better tools that we're sort of building up into. Hullbreacher is fine. Grief is fine. Maybe, do you want a 2-2 split of Grief and Reanimates maybe? Sort of hedge a little bit. Do you want these Dazes? Our opponent's going to have a lot of things to play around Daze, right? So I don't think we want that. We could board in our own Pyroblast for when they have Painter, so we can blow up their Painter. It's a little bit niche. It doesn't always work out for us, but it might be worth as a singleton. But it could just rot away in our hand and we'll lose the game because of it. That makes me more inclined just to play another Grief. Sure. We're going to go for this configuration. We have the ability to do a little bit of scamming with Grief Reanimate, but we're not really looking to go all in on that sort of activity. Maybe we'll play this Faerie Mastermind one day and see how that feels. Okay, our opener, we've got some brainstorms to find the right sort of stuff. I think I'd rather just have some of the answers in hand. Like, we can have 6-card hands that are just way better than this. Like, Murktide is going to be something down the line anyway. Let's just mulligan. Okay, this seems a lot better. We've got a little bit of interaction here. If we draw a black card, we can Grief. I think we want to keep all 3 of our lands so we can be guaranteed the caster opposition agent. Maybe it's the Murktide that goes back then. Or let me have a think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe it's the Murktide. Murktide's not great in this matchup because it's a blue card. And their deck has a lot of Pyroblast in. They can play Magus of the Moon. So I'm going to lead out with this Scalding Tarn so I can get an island and try and ponder into some stuff if necessary. But Magus on turn 1 is going to be very hard for us to beat with our deck. It's also worth noting that if we did bring in the Pyroblast in this matchup, our opponent is quite likely to put Painter's Servant on black just to dodge Snuff Out, rather than sort of tee up some of the blue stuff anyway. Alright. Are we getting Blood Moon on turn 1? Or not? And there's a Saga. Seems very unlikely to get Blood Moon this turn. Lotus Petal. Over to us. A Fatal Push. This is a nice one to have. I'll lead out with an Underground Sea here. So we've got a removal spell in hand, another removal spell in hand. Next turn we can Opposition Agent in response to the Urza Saga. And we can get a Grindstone out so our opponent can't ever do their Grindstone combo because we'll have a Grindstone. So if they ever put Painter into play, we can mill them. That's going to be awkward. Or we can go and get a Pithing Needle for their Grindstone. Plague Engineer. It's not that helpful right now. We'll pass and we will get our Opposition Agent going in our opponent's upkeep, I think, before they know what's going on. So they're going to make a guy here. That's fine. We can deal with this when the time comes. Our opponent's upkeep. We're going to get ourselves probably an island here, just in case we do get Blood Moon. It seems unlikely in the red-white version though, but it's certainly possible. I don't want to get jammed up that way. I don't think we're winning this, right, if we don't cast our spells in hand anyway. So let's just go get an Underground Sea. This is a mandatory search as well. Let's do this guy so we can get the Urza Saga in and see what they see. We can also see their configuration. And we can probably work out a lot of the cards that are in our opponent's hand. If we get to... Well, actually, we get to see their hand, right? Because they fixed that on Modo. For a while, it didn't show your opponent's hand. But we get to see our opponent's hand when they search. Now, they could kill our guy in response, but probably unlikely. We could Lightning Bolt it, I suppose. At the cost of a Lotus Petal, but... Alright. So our opponent's hand, lots of Pyroblasts, a Rip Apart. Which one is this? Target Artifact or Enchantment it can blow up. Okay, understood. Snaring Bridge is certainly interesting. The Ripper part is going to be able to take care of whatever we go and find here. I think we take a Grindstone out, because that's one less Grindstone our opponent has access to. And if our opponent plays a Painter, we might be able to get them. So we can cast this when the time comes, but it's just exiled from their deck. So they played out a Plateau. Oh, okay. It doesn't keep their cards revealed like I thought it would. Still not quite the perfect thing. That's kind of annoying. I was hoping I'd have my little revealed window. So they got a bunch of Pyroblast, a Goblin Engineer. Was it Pyroblast, Goblin Engineer, another Pyroblast, Rip Apart, and this Plateau. Okay. So there's going to be the Rip Apart on our opposition agent here, I suspect. Sure. A Baleful Strix. I think we can cast a Baleful Strix here. We don't have any 1 mana red stuff we want to cast right now. I guess we might want to cast the thing, but I'd rather just have the ability to ponder if we find a ponder here. So this can trade with one of these tokens pretty easily. And we have another Baleful Strix if it comes to that. Then we also have this Fatal Push kicking around. So we know they have a Painter in hand. They could name black, or they could name blue. They have a lot of Pyroblast. They're relatively likely to name blue at this point because of the amount of Pyroblast in their hand. It's going to Pyroblast away our Strix. Sure, I don't hate that. Another Ancient Tomb, sure. So their Ancient Tomb is going to clock them at similar speed to these constructs are going to clock us. And we can go in with a Baleful Strix next turn if we want to. I don't really want to use this Fatal Push on one of these guys if I can avoid it. And the land, another Brainstorm. They can't Pyroblast this. So I think we will Brainstorm first. We'd very much like to hit our next land drop. We did not hit our next land drop. Wowzers trousers. Okay. There's no goblins around at the moment, so we'll get rid of this cage. Get rid of a ponder. And then I guess we ponder shuffle. Unless we find a land with the third card. That'd be nice. A fetch land especially, then we can shuffle away all this dross, as I describe it. We'll fire off the Grixis this turn as well, to make sure that we can get rid of that Painter, so we don't come unstuck. Although we get a better look at our opponent's hand and work out if there's something else we want to take. Okay, so any order and shuffle, and we'll probably draw one of those 3 cards as a tradition. Okay. So I think we will evoke this. The question is, what do we pitch? I think it's probably the Engineer. So having the pinpoint removal to hit their guys is important. I'll put the evoke trigger on the bottom. Let's see what opponent's working with. Okay, Ensnaring Bridge, Goblin Engineer, Painter's Servant. So I think we have to take the Painter's Servant here. It's the thing that makes us lose the game in a more immediate fashion. Alright, so we have a Fatal Push that might be directed at one of these tokens, but more likely is going to be at this Goblin Engineer. A Grindstone from our opponent. Okay. Let's make these guys 3/3s. And they're probably going to play the Engineer as well. I think we're supposed to kill one of these now. Save ourselves some damage. It is a bit awkward if a Painter comes along. But we're kind of hoping to draw a land so we can maybe nab a Painter. They didn't play out the guy. Oh, one of these cards that we shuffled away. Okay, I would like to cast a Brainstorm, please. They could Pyroblast this. Sure, they do Pyroblast it. Alright. So we can either hold open a removal spell in case they play Painter, because they're not going to have the... Pyroblast to protect it this turn. I think we let that happen. And hopefully next turn we can draw a land and we can cast our Baleful Strix and hold up removal. If they play the Engineer, we might be able to... Khan the Great Creator, that's pretty bad for us. Sure. So this is going to go and get the Painter's Servant, I would imagine. So we definitely have to hold open the Anoint with Affliction. Yeah, our opponent's getting some pretty good rips over there and we're just struggling to hit land. Tormod's Crypt. Oh wow. They're really worried about a Murktide, I guess. I guess the Murktide is something that threatens a Khan quite effectively. I think we have to take this 3 here, as annoying as that is. Sure. There goes our graveyard. A Ponder. Jeez. So we can Ponder here. Or we can play out the Baleful Strix and hope to hit a land. I think we have to Ponder. I think that's the more responsible of the plays. So our opponent can fetch a Painter off of the Khan. So let's Ponder and see what we get. Another land drop. It's not really the land drop I want though. Right, we can take out a Plateau and just shut our opponent off mana. They probably have a Great Furnace if they need one in the sideboard anyway. I think this is in any order again. A Nile Spellbomb. Doesn't really help us either. Alright, we're on the Anoint with Affliction. We're in a real jam here. We're just so desperate for this 4th land. Because we kind of have to hold up every turn because they can kill us every turn. It's a real jam up for sure. Our Snuff Outs are looking decidedly poor as well now. Because we're going to be going down a pretty low life total. I think our opponent has us here. They're so far ahead on board. They could even animate their Grindstone and just get in first 3. Although if they go and fetch another artifact and put it into play, it's kind of the same amount of damage increase. So they may as well go and get Painter here. A Soul Guide Lantern. Alright. There is a Soul Guide Lantern. Goodbye Ponder. A Lion's Eye Diamond. So we know all the cards in our opponent's hand. Goblin Engineer. Sure. So they're making a big construct to force us to kill it. And this is going to put Painted Servant into the graveyard. Oh, a Phyrexian Dragon Engine. Interesting. Alright. So we need to kill this guy. I don't think we can afford to take 4 there. Murktide Regent that we can't cast. Interesting. I think we are on blue, black. Cast this guy. This can pressure the Khan a little bit. Oh my god, we found a land. Alrighty. Let's play. So the text of this is enters the battlefield, you may draw, and it's Unearth. Which if you exile it in response, it stays and it doesn't come in. So we're going to play this Nile Spellbomb, which we can't activate, of course. But it's in there. And then we'll go and get ourselves this. Might as well be Underground Sea. And we'll go and play this Grafdigger's Cage. So we've covered the Phyrexian Dragon Engine there. We know they have an Ensnaring Bridge in hand, so they can turtle up behind that. Lion's Eye Diamond means it's pretty free for them to do so. They can draw a card off the Soul Guide Lantern as well. Our opponent's draw has been much better than ours, and I suspect they are going to win this game. But it could definitely go wrong for them. Like if they brick up for a couple of turns and we don't, I think we're right back in it, maybe. So our opponent can plus their Khan this turn, and then we can attack it down. And that's going to just keep happening. So our opponent might be able to come in with their Engineer and get us. They can't get the Painted Servant back out the bin with the Engineer. They can't get the Dragon Engine. They can get a Lotus Petal because Grafdigger's Cage is only creature cards. Till next turn. Okay, they're not doing any targets. We have to keep attacking the Khan because if they have a Painter in the sideboard, they win if they minus it. Ensnaring Bridge. Okay, we don't get to attack the Khan now. What is our solution to this problem? A Wasteland. Is that a solution to our problem? I don't think it is. I think we play out the Wasteland here. We can Wasteland away their white source. But what does that realistically do for us? Nothing. We can play out this Grindstone, which doesn't do anything because of the Khan. How are we supposed to beat a Planeswalker with that deck? That feels... I guess we could have drawn Kolaghan's Command this turn and kill this and blow up like the Grindstone, and then we'd probably win the game quite handily, or blow up the bridge or whatever. I think we can be alright there. So they have the Lion's Eye Diamond as a problem, so we can't Wasteland them off of the mana they need. Do we save this Wasteland in case they play... I think we are just dead here, right? But there is a possibility that our opponent doesn't have a Painted Servant in their sideboard. Seems unlikely, but it's not an impossibility. So we're hoping our opponents made a mistake with their sideboarding, maybe. That's the sort of level Cracking that fetch end of turn is interesting to me. That makes me think you don't have a painter in the sideboard, because if you do, like, this is... Unless they're really worried about what we've got in hand. Okay, so what they're just drawing a card with their thing, sure. So what are we trying to do here? Okay, immediately punished for Wasteland in the... Alright. Interesting. They didn't just go for a win. Oh, sorry, we can dismiss this. There's no which we know they have one card in hand. Surely they're going to play this out, otherwise we get to attack them with our Strix. Unless they want to crack their Lion's Eye Diamond. Surgical Extraction is quite a nice one, isn't it? That stops us dying to some stuff. Is it better to attack Karn here? Or to attack them? Because they're only on 5 life. We can shut off all of these ancient tombs. Yeah, I didn't hate that as a plan. We don't want to surgically extract the Painted Servant because that means our opponent can definitely fetch it with a Karn. Okay, so the reason they probably up this is so that we can't activate these in response when they try and go off. So I imagine we are dead here. But us being able to activate a Grindstone against them doesn't do anything. So they can play the Painter with the Urza Saga on the Mountain, and then they can activate it with the Lion's Eye Diamond here. We kind of need our opponent to fetch the guy. Is this going to come in for 1? Oh, I'm seeing some cowardice from our opponent there. Okay. Meltdown or Kolaghan's Command? Command deck. A Grief. Not a fan of that one. Let's go to attacks. So this is going to make quite the large yacht, isn't it? I don't think we attack this turn. Wow, they're just cracking this and making a token. Okay, so this isn't going to be able to do a great deal anyway, because they're going to have too many cards in hand. Oh, not enough cards in hand for this to attack. I think we just hold up the Surgical Extraction here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't really want to... Like, the Grief is unlikely to attack here. I think we're just trying to draw Kolaghan's Command, really. We could play the Grief to play into that, but we might want the Surgical Extraction. Alright. So they're putting a Lotus Petal in. We can surgically extract the Lotus Petal. Is that worth doing? I'm just thinking, if we surgically extract this Lotus Petal, our opponent... they've removed their Ensnaring Bridge to do this. If we get rid of this Lotus Petal, our opponent has less mana for their turn. This goes away, but can find them all sorts of stuff. I think we have to let this go. We're trying to get our opponent to put a painter in their hand, and then with that on this, and then put some sort of trigger on the stack, ideally, and say extract it. I don't think this Lotus Petal makes the difference. I guess that was their only... Because they can always just turn this construct they have into a Lion's Eye Diamond for their activation mana. So I don't think that makes a difference. So they have 2 mana from this, 1 mana to turn this construct into a painter. So, and if we surgically extract the painter in response, and they haven't activated the Karn, they get the Karn. So it's tough. I guess they could have a Fury here, but that would have to use up some of their petals. Interesting. This is 4, 5, 6. So a way of removing our guy and animate the Grindstone. They might be able to kill us here. This does look like they're casting. Oh god, I wish we had a Kolaghan's Command. Okay, so they're turning our Grafdigger's Cage into a guy. Okay. Fury. So they're going to kill all of our things. So this is hard cast as well. Alright. Not ideal for us. Truth be told. Sure. So now they attack us for 3. And then they can have us dead next turn in a multitude of ways. So if we'd have played that Grief, maybe we'd have had more lines here. So we draw. I just didn't want to have to pay life for the Surgical Extraction is the thing. What could we draw here? Meltdown doesn't do it. Plague Engineer, I guess. Brainstorm's not a bad way to start a turn off. Reanimate. Does Reanimate do anything? It puts us to 1. It's not really the number I want to be in. We don't have a way of killing this Fury. If we kill this Fury, we can't reanimate it anyway. So how are we supposed to win the game with these tools? We have 3 mana available to us. We can put 2 Baleful Strixes into play, which brings us to 1 life, which means we die to any of their attackers. So that's not the way, is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Just trying to think how we can get anything out of this. Because our Baleful Strix aren't going to draw us any new cards, because they're just going to draw us these cards we've seen in the Brainstorm. So that's not very good. We don't have any cool things we can fetch from our opponent. We could just kill ourselves by getting their Affliction Dragon Engine, which doesn't feel like a great move to me. No, I don't think there's any way out of this. We can play 1 guy and chump block this, and then we take 3 exactly and die. And obviously then get any artifact to make this guy even bigger as well. No, I don't think we have a way out of this. Yeah, I think our opponent drew better than us, but we also had a few turns where we wasted life being put in a spot by our opponent because we had to respect their combo, which meant they got chip damage in. So we, they did a very good way of taxing our resources, and we had a load of turns where we were digging for a land, and yeah, we didn't find the land. And if we had found the land early on, it would have been fine. But because we didn't, the line our opponent took was a really good one that forced us to take a bunch of damage when maybe we didn't have to take that damage. So, an interesting game, that one. But sadly, we did not cross the line with it. I think I'd be pretty happy to play this matchup in general, because we've got Meltdowns and Kolaghan's Command, and we got some nice removal as well. But I do think Karn is a bit of a problem. Our deck is very cold to Planeswalkers. Our ability to threaten Planeswalkers isn't necessarily great either. So that's definitely a concern. Alright, let's go to round 3. Alright, this is our opener. It's not ideal. We do have no fetch lands, so we don't have the option for a basic if we wanted one. But we do have the new card, which I'd quite like to see in action. So I think we're going to keep this one. We've got Force of Will for protection, and if we find any black card, we can grief. Or if we find another blue card, we can happily brainstorm some stuff away. I think this is alright. It's a keeper. I think grief is generally a lot worse than Thoughtseize because it requires another component. But obviously the ceiling on grief is really high because you can do... Okay, our opponent's playing some stuff that looks a lot like a Doomsday deck. Do we Force of Will our opponent's Doomsday? Their personal tutor? I think so. Right, so they have a Daze. So they get to personal tutor. Understood. So we lose in probably 2 turns. But if we can find a black card for the grief... Now, we could have kept the Brainstorm instead. Instead of the Faerie Mastermind to try and dig for another piece of hate. Alright. Maybe that's the better line. It's quite a conservative line, but I think that's probably where we should have gone. But I'm determined to get this Faerie Mastermind to do something. Okay, there's the Underground Sea we know about. They have a Doomsday in hand. Okay, they're brainstorming first. So they've got the Doomsday, but they don't have necessarily the pieces they want to go with it. I'm probably looking for another black source. So just making sure they can get one. Alright. So to us. We have a Snuff Out, which is unlikely to be great here. But we're going to play out this Underground Sea, and we're going to evoke using the Snuff Out. And hopefully snipe this Doomsday from our opponent. They might have brainstormed it on top so we can't hit it with a Doomsday. That's probably the smart thing to do. Let's see if they've done that. They did not do that. Okay. We'll take the Doomsday and we'll leave them with Ponder, Misty Rainforest. So this guy's got Flash. So when they cast a Ponder, we're going to flash this guy in and get some free value for free. Okay, so cracking their Misty Rainforest. They knew what's on top because they brainstormed the previous turn. We're just waiting to get them with this Fairy. It doesn't stop them drawing a card, but it does give us a free card. Oh, they drew the Doomsday. Alright, opponent. It's a pretty good one. So, they have a Ponder, which helps them riffle through their pile a little bit quicker as well. Alright, our opponent's made their pile now, so let's see what is in there. There's a Lion's Eye Diamond is not in there. The Street Wraith. So we've got one Edge of Autumn, one Street Wraith, a second Street Wraith, no more Edges of Autumn. No more Street Wraith, sorry. So they've probably got some amount of Street Wraiths in their pile. Hopefully us flashing our guy in might mess up their plan. If we can have enough mana to activate this, which we're unlikely to, but if we did, we could activate it while their library's empty and force them to lose the game. A Wasteland. Does that stop what our opponent's doing? I don't know, but we don't really have a choice here. We're just going to do everything we can to interact with our opponent. Like, we could try and play the land and hope that our opponent passes the turn twice, but if they've got all their mana, they're not very likely to not pass a turn, right? If we can take some of the blue mana out from underneath them, they might not have enough cantrips or whatever. But I suspect we're in trouble here. Would have been nice to have the land to try and get this guy's activated ability to stop them from being able to Thassa's Oracle, if it's the bottom card of their library. They wouldn't be able to win. But I don't think they would assemble a line that passes the turn twice, given the fact that they had 2 mana in play, 1 mana in hand, and the Ponder. I think that's a fool's errand to try and believe that would work. There's the Ponder. So we're going to get a card out for this. But our opponent is obviously going to be digging into a pile. And if they set their Thassa's Oracle as the penultimate card, they'll be able to beat the Faerie Mastermind anyway. So I don't think the correct line is to not Wasteland. I think it is always worth Wasteland in there. Alright. Another land. Okay. So I think we're getting another turn here, but that's only because we Wastelanded them, I reckon. A Daze. Not really the one we want, is it? Let's go to attacks. So if they cast any spell, we will Daze it. They're going to have Cavern of Souls in their pile. Oh my lord. Are they not going for it this turn? Huh. Interesting. This would be a good turn to draw. Alright, we just play another Underground Sea, why not? Okay. So if our opponent goes for Thassa's Oracle this turn, they win the game. And we can't really stop them. We can't make them pay, like they can... But if they... Oh, okay. Our opponent can't win now. Unless they remove our Faerie Mastermind. Oh, wow. We're going to win the game with Faerie Mastermind. That's pretty sick. Sure. Right, here comes the Thassa's Oracle. So we put this trigger on the stack. And we activate this. They have no cards in their library. Quite the screenshot there. Alright. Not bad. I think we stole one there. Right, our opponent's playing Doomsday. So... Opposition Agent is pretty good. Narset, pretty good. Force of Negation, pretty good. Snuff Out's not so good here. Fatal Pusher's not so good either. Now, our opponent could be running Sheoldred. I think we're just going to try and counterspell Sheoldred. And if we need a game 2, we can do that. Surgical Extraction is fine. I don't think we want to Anoint with Affliction. It doesn't kill Sheoldred anyway, which is the usual sideboard Duke. I think we want all of our counter magic and stuff. Hullbreacher pretty good too. I think we'll just submit like this. The other option we have is Pyroblast. That's the other thing we can board in and just hit as many cantrips as possible. I like Kolaghan's Command because it discards. I think that's okay. The Scam package here is going to be good, so I don't really want to trade that out. The Hymns are also going to be good. Our Daze is going to be good on the play. It will tax our opponent's mana, maybe, on like crucial turns. But if we're trying to get up to these 3 mana spells, then maybe we're supposed to bin off the Dazes? The Pyroblasts? Feels weird boarding out counter magic in this matchup. I don't think that's the thing I want to do. I think we'll submit like this and not try and hit their cantrips. We cannot keep our opening hand, we will mulligan it. We cannot keep this hand. Well, we could with a bunch of counter magic and hope we get there. But that's very fast and loose. I'm thinking about it weirdly. 2 Force of Will effects. Go on then. Let's try this. 2 Force of Will effects. And a Ponder or Brainstorm if we draw a land. Just having a little chat with our opponent, who seems like a lovely human being, which is always nice to see. Apparently they found my Doomsday video the other day. Ah, good. Alright, opponents began with a Polluted Delta, so our Wasteland isn't going to hit anything. We don't have any Dazes available to us because we don't have a blue source. Didn't draw a blue source. If we'd have kept the Grief instead, we could have had triple pieces of interaction there, or 4 pieces if you include the Wasteland. But I think this is... Our plan is 2 Force of Wills into Ponder. Right, so our opponent has a land, a Thoughtseize. I think we will let our opponent see what they're up against. A little bit of a loose one, some might say. I think we're probably going to lose the... It's tricky to know if you take the Force of Will or Force of Negation. If they take Force of Will, then Force of Negation obviously can't hit as many things, but Force of Negation can pretty much hit everything in their thing and we can cast it. But what it does do is it exiles the things, so they can't be surgical. So if we were to counterspell, if we were to Force of Negation their Doomsday, oh, I've taken the Ponder. Yeah, so if they were to Force of Will a Doomsday, if Force of Negation the Doomsday, we couldn't surgically extract it if we drew one. Now, I don't know we're playing these things, but... Alright. I think we will just try and take their mana out at this point. It's the only play really available to us. We kept a bit of a speculative one here. But any lands bar Badlands, and we'd have been, and we'd be okay. We still got this Brainstorm that we can use, although we might Brainstorm lock ourselves, but that's the price you pay sometimes. I don't think we're going to Opposition Agent this turn, Grief this turn. I think we'll try and Grief next turn. So we do still have 2 layers of protection here. Now our opponent knows we have these 2 counterspells. Or Thoughtseize. Okay, they're going to get to have a look again and take something else. Lowering their life total means if we can get a creature in play, it's going to be hard for the hard for them to Doomsday and do a pass of turn line if their life total is low. Okay, they took our Brainstorm, so they want to stop us being able to play lands and things, which is pretty reasonable. But the longer this game goes on, the more chance there is of us drawing. Alright, let's evoke this Grief so we're at least doing something. Our hand is 2 for 1-ing itself a lot over here, but what we got here? Shoulder the Apocalypse. I do not want them to play a Shoulder the Apocalypse. I'm going to put this one away. So that's like the fair thing they can just do and we can't answer very easily. So they do have the Shoulder Duke, which is good to know. We don't really have any proper removal for it. Okay, they drew a Ponder for turn. But they do have Force of Will blue card. They're just looking for more mana to put Doomsday on the stack. Now we can counter a Doomsday and they can counter back. And then we can counter back. And then they can just play a Doomsday the next turn. So we will need something. But we're live to draw in Reanimate on their Shouldred. If we can draw Black Land and Reanimate, that'd be pretty good. Him to Tourach. That's not the one, is it? So we could have kept another Grief in hand instead of pitching it. Maybe that's the stronger play there. We've definitely caused ourselves some issues with what we've done with our mana. Alright. So our opponent is going to cast a Doomsday. We are going to Force of Will this. This way, if we draw the Surgical Extraction, we can Surgical Extract it out of their hand. I imagine they're going to Force of Will here. Or they might just Force of Will the next one. We're going to hit the Force of Will rather than the Doomsday because we want to try and draw a Surgical Extraction here. And they pitched the Thassa's Oracle we know about. So this is all going to work. And then they're going to go to their next turn and they're going to cast Doomsday again. But we're going to draw Surgical Extraction. It's going to be great. We drew an Underground Sea. That's halfway there. If we can draw a Shoulder, if we can draw a Reanimate after our opponent does Doomsday pass a turn, then we should win because the Shouldred will kill them before they get to okay, so we've got Doomsday with mana. So if they've got a cantrip in hand, we lose the game this turn. We did keep a speculative hand that needed to draw a land, and we didn't draw one for a long time. But it gave us 3 pieces of interaction against a combo deck that usually goes off in the first 3 turns. So I think I would still make that keep. Although what I would probably do differently is pitch the Opposition Agent to the Grief. I think that was a mistake. We could have had a second Grief and we could have cleared that Doomsday from their hand. I think that was just a mistake. I was thinking oh, if we can get to cast this Opposition Agent, but that's not what the game's about, and I didn't keep a hand that was looking to cast Opposition Agent in the near future. So I think that one is on me if we lose this one, which seems relatively likely, right? But they have one card in hand, so we just got to hope it's not a cantrip. Let's see what they've sideboarded in here. So the Shoulder is gone now, actually, so we can't do that play. They've gone to 6. They got one card in hand. Hint to Tourach that we can't cast. All right, I think we've lost this one, but we get Dazes. We already have Dazes in, actually, didn't we? We didn't take them out. So I think we're okay-ish. Ideas Unbound, sure. So our opponent should be able to win this turn quite handily. Well, our opponent said they're quite new to the deck, so I'm going to let them play out the line rather than conceding immediately and wait till they put their guy on the stack, because it helps them out. Here we go. And here's the wizard. Okay, so we kept a speculative one there, and it didn't really pan out, and we did make one error with it, in my opinion. So, Anoint with Affliction does not kill Shouldered. Fatal Push can kill Shouldered? Are we supposed to keep Fatal Pushes in to kill Shouldered? Or are we just supposed to try and Grief or Force of Will the Shouldered? Genuinely a tough one. We do have Dazes as well. I like Murktide as a thing that ends the game quickly. I think we're just going to submit like this. And we have some answers for Shouldered, but they're proactive answers. Okay. We'll keep this. We might be able to Shouldered our opponent on turn 1. Let's try that. We'll play our Underground Sea first. We can play our Daze. Cast this, pitching this Baleful Strix. Let's see what you're working with, opponent. Force of Will. So they do have a Force of Will, which is annoying. I think we're going to take the Shouldered here. We're not going to reanimate it into the face of... If this is a Force of Will, I would obviously cast the Reanimate right now. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to Force of Negation something in our opponent's turn and see if they want to force it through. Because if they get a Doomsday, then we put a Shoulder into play. It's going to be a bit of a burden for them. So there's the Underground Sea. Just going to cast a Personal Tutor. Now, they might not have a blue card here if they cast a Personal Tutor, so we're more likely to get this Reanimate to resolve next turn anyway. Personal Tutor. Alright. Let's say no to Personal Tutor. Right. Did our opponent draw a blue card? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. A Brainstorm. I think we cast this Brainstorm first, in case you draw a Daze. Another Grief, but no card to go with it. Interesting. I kind of want all of these cards in varying ways, but probably not the Grief. Put the Grief bottom, then the Wasteland. Do we want to draw the Wasteland, or do we want to ponder now looking for a Daze or a... Like, the thing we're trying to play around here is Force of Will, right? So I think we're just going to... We do have Kolaghan's Command, but I think we're going to be looking for more black mana here. Let's try and cast a Ponder. Okay. Interesting. So I think we'll put Force of Will, then Brainstorm, and then Reanimate. We'll not shuffle. So our plan is to cast a Reanimate next turn. And that way we can go through a Force of Will. Maybe it's a little bit slower than just running out there, but if it gets countered, we don't really get to do anything. This time we have 2 bites of the cherry to just put a Shoulder into play, which should really mess with our opponent. Because their whole thing is they need to draw 5 cards. Alright, let's cast Reanimate targeting Shouldered. This will prompt the Force of Will if they have it. Okay, they did not have it. That's good to know. Do we Reanimate targeting Grief now? I think so. Let's just put the screws in. Oh, wowzers, trousers. Force of Will, Dark Ritual, Duress. None of these are cards that really matter, to be honest. I guess Lion's Eye Diamond might allow them to do something a bit gross. But I honestly don't know what I'm supposed to take here. Maybe the Duress, so at least our Brainstorm's alive. So you got Lion's Eye Diamond, Force of Will, Dark Ritual, Swamp. 4 cards. Alright, so we've got Shoulder Trigger, So this is what, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so basically they had one draw to try and deal with what they had going on. All right, so we are 2-1 now. We're on the play for round 4. Our hand doesn't really cast its spells. I think I'm going to mulligan this. Our hand doesn't cast any spells at all with this one, so this is another mulligan. This is, oh, it's Tony as well. So we know what our opponent's playing a little bit as well here. Alright, this hand is much more keepable than all the others. I think we can keep 2 hymns. We need to get rid of 1 card here. Given that the matchup's probably going to be a combo-based one, I'm going to get rid of a fetch land. So we are looking for our bits and pieces, like more disruption, possibly a way of ending the game. We're looking at here. Snuff Out, probably not so good. Wasteland might be good, but I don't really want to draw the rest of these cards. I think we're going to go any order and shuffle. Right, we drew one of them anyway. So we're looking for another mana source for our hymn to Tourach. If you're unfamiliar with Tony Scapone, he's one of the best Storm deck builders out there, and you should definitely check his channel out. I've played some of his decks before on my channel, and it's always been real good. So this is a defense grid. So this is something we have to counter, otherwise we don't get to counter anything else. So he's just him to Tourach me, pretty much. So now he's probably going to play some more stuff out, or not. So we very much need to draw a black source. We did not draw a black source. All right, this one is probably over here. We mulligan to 5. We've definitely been having a bit of mana issues with the deck, to be honest. We do have the cantrips to kind of fix it, but we are casting him to Tourach in a deck with Wastelands and a Volcanic and a basic island. So we've got 6 lands that don't cast our him to Tourach. All right, just Grim Monolith Pass. Interesting. Ay, ay, ay. We're not getting there, are we? Yikes. Bergy Storyteller. So we could force a Daze off on this. This is probably the last time we get to use the Daze this turn. I think we just let this go. I don't think the 1 mana here is going to make the difference. As sad as that is. Yeah, so... Right, if the 1 mana would make a difference, it'll make a difference later on when we get to cast this, maybe. Alright, so we're looking at here. A Wish. Sure. Let's go up to 3 mana. This could be a relay, or they could just be casting an Empty the Warrens. Pretty fine here. Like, I think we're pretty dunzos, but we'll see. I think our opponent's considering what interaction we might have. A Burning Wish. Okay, so they have 4 mana for Tendrils. This is exactly Tendrils, so I think we'll float this and we'll return this island. So if this is a Burning Wish for Tendrils, they will need an additional mana. This means they can just get a Galvanic Relay instead, but it means we're not dead this turn as easily. But I don't think we get a better shot with what we're doing there. A Void Snare. Interesting. So maybe we shut down our opponent's Tendrils line there? They can do stuff in the second main phase. Okay, they were just waiting for our blue mana to burn off. Sure. Alright. A Void Snare. Targeting their Lotus Petal. Sure. This is... So the Void Snare is mana neutral, because the Bergy adds 1, and then they play the Lotus Petal, and that gives them 1 additional mana. So this takes them up to 4 mana effectively. So they got 1 card in hand with 4 mana available. Could be an empty, main deck empty. Could be just a big relay. White mana. What was our opponent? Could be like a Belcher. No, it's just an empty. Sure. So we don't have any way of beating empty in the main deck. That'll do us. So, tough out there. So Force of Negation, Pyroblast does hit some of their things, but not necessarily all the things you would think would be good. So Pyroblast can hit their Echo, but it doesn't do anything against the rest of their spells, whereas Force of Negation does. Narset doesn't stop Relay, but it does stop Echo, but it's a 3 mana spell, so I don't think that's a realistic ambition either. Meltdown, on the other hand, these decks tend to play some artifacts and pass a turn, so we can get the meltdowns in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll strip out some pushes. I think we probably take out the Snuff Outs. Kolaghan's Command blows up a thing. Hullbreacher is a blue card as well, so I don't hate that. We probably don't have enough time to leverage Baleful Strix stuff, but this does pitch to both of our things. So maybe it's the Ponder that goes. Because if we're in desperation mode, I'd rather have a Brainstorm as well. I think we're looking at this configuration. So the Plague Engineers are for Empty the Warrens. And yeah, I think that's about it. Like, you can play Surgical Extraction, but stuff shouldn't really be in their bin in a way that we can surgical. Like, Tony's very, very good at that. It looks like he's playing the Epic Gamble, which is his deck as well. So he's not going to get caught by a Surgical Extraction on an Echo. Now, we might be able to discard it and do something, but we don't really want to be doing that anyway. We want to be discarding the bigger business spells, like the Lion's Eye Diamonds and the stuff that enables everything. So we're going to submit like this. Our plan is disrupt and make a big Murktide as early as possible. And maybe keep 7 cards. That'd be nice. We can keep these 7 cards. Can we keep these 7 cards? What is this card? Maybe we can just Wasteland him out of the game? Sure, we'll try this. We'll try the double Wasteland hand with Daze, Force, and potentially Grief coming soon. It's some disruption, and it's... So, like, the deck doesn't run that many lands, right? So maybe we can trim on their mana sources. Right, so play this out first so we have access to our Daze, and we will pass. I'm not massively confident here. Like, these decks are designed to farm blue decks because Galvanic Relay is just so hard for blue decks to interact with meaningfully. Unless you have Stifles, I guess. Which we don't, obviously. A Fiery Islet. So Force of Negation also pretty good for hitting a front-sided Echo, which sometimes happens. Okay, our opponent didn't play anything off the Fiery Islet. Okay, we're not far away from being able to do the thing. I'm going to hold on for another black card. So we can pitch the Grief and then reanimate the Grief. And hopefully that should be enough to win a game. Especially if we can keep Wastelanding. Alright, no lands. That doesn't mean our opponent doesn't have a mana, it just means it's probably artifact mana. Black card. Not a black card. Right, we're going to play out this Scalding Tarn so we can hard cast the Daze and then also pitch cast. We just need to draw a black card so we can do the Grief Scam trick. Although we're getting close to just hard casting the Grief, which is also a thing. Okay. They're probably going to discard Echo. Yeah, as expected. A Polluted Delta. Alright. So we've got hard cast Force of Negation and Force of Will pitching Daze. Is this the turn our opponent goes? They don't need to because we're not representing anything, but they do have a full grip. They might just be playing out a Lotus Petal or something. They've probably got Empty the Warrens in as well. So, going to be tough. We do have reasonable tools here, and we do get to cast Grief next turn. A Chrome Mox, you say? We've kind of been trying to hit our opponent on starting mana a little bit here. Is this some sort of bait? It's going to get Volcanic in case we draw a Meltdown. So we can, if we Daze this, I don't think the deck plays Spirit Guide. No, it does play Spirit Guides, right? So I don't think we should be dazing this. I think we should be... I'm going to Force of Will this, pitching Daze. And then hold up the Force of Negation. We can't hit Bergie with Force of Negation. But we can hit something that allows him to get up to the mana to cast it. Be a great time to draw a black card, because then we get double Thoughtseize instead of just a single Thoughtseize. If we draw a blue card or a black card, we're okay here. What have we got? A blue card. Okay. Crack this for a black source. Let's get the boy in. Alright. Relay is the hardest thing for us to play around here. Bergie is kind of annoying. But I think it's the relay that's got to go. We're a blue deck. We don't have an answer to relay. This also gives our opponent information about what we can deal with. They might think we have a removal for Bergie, which is not really likely, to be honest. But so go Petal, Right Flame, Right Flame. Well, they go Petal, yeah, Petal, Right Flame, Right Flame. That gives them 2, 3, 4 mana. So 5 makes the Horn. So we can counter the Horn. Which is definitely what we counter here, because Horn is pretty gross. They could Summon Spirit Guide, Rite of Flame, Lotus Petal, Backside Echo. That's also pretty good. definitely some various lines our opponent can take here. Searing Spirit Guide, pitching Rite of Flame. So Lotus Petal, Searing Spirit Guide, pitching Rite of Flame. Put 5 cards in hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, sorry, they've got a Lotus Petal in hand still. So we have to let this Rite of Flame go. And wait, if we counter this, just trying to work out. If we counter this Rite of Flame, so Searing Spirit Guide's gone. If we exile this, this will have less mana on it. Oh dear, we should counter this, I think. I just want to work out if we want to Daze it or Force of Negation it. They can play a Burgie this turn if we Daze it. If we Force of Negation it, they can't play a Burgie this turn. But then we have nothing for next turn. That's a tough call. I'm going to go for a Daze. So they can Lotus Petal into... Okay, they didn't Lotus Petal there. Alright, so we'll play this out again. We'll start attacking our opponent. And we're holding up Force of Negation, hopefully for the Horn. But if our opponent... We've been trying to hit our opponent on starting mana, right? So if they Lotus Petal and cast a Rite of Flame, I think we hit the Rite of Flame. I think we let them Lotus Petal, but then we hit the Rite of Flame. I think we're in an okay position, and some more cards would certainly not hurt. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can play this out and attack. Black, blue. Let's increase our clock slightly. And also maybe gets... Oh, that's a real nice draw. That interacts with various things our opponent has. It can blow up a Horn. If they play a Horn and pass, we don't have to Force of Negation it then. Right, I think we might have threaded the needle here, but it's always pretty scary playing against Tony on Storm. Pulls out wins from nowhere, so got to be ultra vigilant. We need to keep to our game plan of stopping the starting mana. We already have a Wasteland saved up if they've got a basic land to play, so I can hit his, a non-basic land, and all of the lands in his deck are non-basic, I think. So, all right, what have we got here? A Brainstorm. That's a pretty good one because we got this dud. Reanimate. Put our opponent to 10. I'm going to cast this Brainstorm. Meltdown, Grief, him to Tourach. So if we him to Tourach, we can't... so I think we'll have this Reanimate. Wait, no. We'll put the Kolaghan's Command, then the Meltdown. And then this turn we can evoke this guy and reanimate him and hold up Force of Negation. So what are we scared of here? They've got multiple starting sources of mana here. Multiple payoffs. We can take the 2 Burning Wishes, but I think we can take a Burgie first and reanimate targeting Grief. And then we take one of the Burning Wishes, and then we pass a turn. So they got 5 cards in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sure. Okay. So we've got 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's one of the Lotus Petals we know about. There's another Lotus Petal that we know about. There's a Mox Opal. There's a Rite of Flame. There's a Burning Wish, we counter it. There's a Lion's Eye Diamond. Okay. They also have the Echo in the bin. Now, is this going to get an Overmaster? They've got black mana off of their LED, which means they might have a Thoughtseize in the sideboard. Do you want our opponent to have one card from Burning Wish or the Echo? I think putting the black mana was gamesmanship, trying to make me think they've got Thoughtseize in the board. We're going to let them Burning Wish. Tendrils of Agony. This is exactly lethal, isn't it? Yeah. Oh my god, why didn't I counter that? That's embarrassing. Yeah, I punted that game. Yep, that was a punt from me. Ugh. Too busy worried about the Echo going off. Ugh. Very embarrassing. On the play for the final round, we have him to Tourach into him to Tourach with Wasteland stuff. We don't have a way of winning, but we have a Brainstorm that can find it when the time comes. So we're going to lead out on a fetch land so we can't be wastelanded off of our him to Tourach plan. A basic mountain into Goblin Guide. Alright. So the him to Tourach should buy us 6 life when we cast it. That's pretty good. Got a land. And play out this Underground Sea. Crack this for an Underground Sea. Him to Tourach our opponent. Alright, we took an Eidolon. That's pretty good. That card's rather nice against us. Our Wasteland's not going to be useful in this matchup. Our opponent is going to be all about the mountains. Swift Spear, sure. Just take 3 this turn. Grief has entered. Alright, so I think we want to cast a Brainstorm first. We've got a lot of cards we don't want in our hand here. Price of Progress is going to be good against us, just generally speaking. So, I quite like these Dazes though. So we'll put back a Wasteland and Badlands. Crack this for an Underground Sea. We will aim to Tourach our opponent. And next turn we want to play a Grief, which can potentially gobble up a Swift Spear and then trade with a Goblin Guide. They can Fireblast around Daze here if they want to. Force of Will on top of our library. Alright. Is that going to make our opponent think about playing some stuff now? We're just going to take 3. A Lightning Bolt. It's got 1 card in hand. Problem is if we Daze here, we don't get to play the Grief next turn. Pin this out. Cast this guy. Black, black, black 1. Here comes the Grief. If they've got a burn spell, they can fire it from response, and we can bounce our Underground Sea so we have less non-basics to play. We'll take the Fireblast. They know we have a Force of Will in hand, which is why they didn't sacrifice both their mountains just into the Force of Will there. They can do it on attacks, maybe, but they're not going to do it on blocks. Let's see what we got here. A Brainstorm. Is Brainstorm good enough to trade off here? I think we have to trade. We can't just let them get our life total to 4. Another mountain, sure. Just need to deal with a Swift Spear. Let's get Brainstorm going. Looking for a creature, basically. A little bit few and far between in our deck, sadly. Not what we wanted to see here. The Dazes are looking less good, but we'll keep 1 for Force of Will fodder. Play this. Do we want to go to 5? I think we do, just for the maximum amount of looks here. We'll get this in case we draw a Kolaghan's command. We'll cast a Ponder. Any order, shuffle. A Brainstorm. I think we're going to Ponder again this turn. Okay. We would like all of these cards. So we're going to put the Hymn to Tourach on the bottom, then the Strix for next turn, and then we're going to cast Murktide Regent now. 1, let's just make it the biggest one. Sorry, not the Grief. Let's make the biggest one possible, because we need to close the game in a reasonable fashion here. Alright, so we've got Force of Will and Daze up here. And this can attack because we've got a guy coming next turn. Roiling Vortex. Beginning to do 1 damage to them. Whenever a player casts a spell for no mana. I think we're going to counterspell this. Sure. This guy is not attacking. Black, blue. We know this is the Hymn to Tourach, which is not great, but means we have to draw it next turn. But we can bash for 8 this turn. We do have a Daze up, which is unlikely to be good enough in the face of a Fireblast, but here we are. Always trading here. Over to us. A Snuff Out. This can kill a lot of their guys. So they have a haste guy. We've got that covered with the Snuff Out. I don't think we can afford to Hymn to Tourach here because we have to keep our wits about us for a haste guy. We lose to Fireblast. Alright, we didn't lose to Fireblast. Okay, so we would like creatures so we can actually close a game out and do stuff on the board. We would like removal spells for their little guys and maybe counter spells here. Snuff Out costing us 4 life doesn't feel like where we want to be. Dazes aren't going to be great against them, I don't think. Hymn to Tourach will be. Ponders and stuff less so. So we don't want to be cantripping too much. We want to be casting our spells. Reanimate is probably not where we want to be actually. So let's get the Ponder and Dazes back in instead of Reanimates. Our Wastelands are bad. We can board out our Wastelands if we want to. Sure, I think this will do. Suspect we probably lose this one on the draw, unless our hand's really good. Yeah, this one seems alright. We get to kill the first creature and then we can ponder into more creatures. Price of Progress is going to be a real pain for us. Alright, is this going to do anything? So we can draw an extra card? We did draw an extra card, that's nice. Okay, so we can play this out, crack this for... Has to be an Underground Sea, given that we're trying to cast this fail push in our opponent's turn. The reason we want to do it in our opponent's turn is so we can potentially get a free draw off of this. We're going to have to discard a card though, aren't we? That's kind of annoying, but we'll discard a Murktide. Maybe we should have discarded Brainstorm then, I'm not sure. We did not draw a card there. Yeah, there's also a possibility that our opponent plays a Swift Spear and pumps it a couple of times. Roiling Vortex. If we counterspell this, we can just make a Murktide, right? And that should be big. I think we're going to get Basic Island for the purposes of Price of Progress, I think. 1, 2, 3. So yeah, we can cast a little Murktide. But it's little, but it's bigger than all of our opponent's things, right? Maybe if we just discarded a Ponder instead, we could have had a slightly bigger Murktide, but a 5/5 is fine. This is a 4-turn clock. Our opponent can't attack us with a Hasty Guy this turn. We untap into Ponder. If they play an Eidolon, they probably lose their own Eidolon. Okay, Swift Spear that's not attacking. Cool. We're behind on the race for now, but we get to attack for 5. Anoint with Affliction is nice, but we need a land to really cast any of these things. I guess we can cast the next turn. You can hold up Force of Will and then just cast Anoint with Affliction or Baleful Strix. Maybe this is actually alright. I think I'd rather have the Ponder though. So I think I'm going to put Anoint on the bottom, then Strix, then Brainstorm. We'll draw the Brainstorm, which can go into a Force of Will if needed. And we'll attack with this. And if we have to do some rearranging, we can do. I don't think we're casting anything else here. I think we're just going to let... Yeah, we didn't want the Ponder then. I think we just save it till we get through these cards. Alright. Oh, they're shooting our Murktide Regent. Interesting. Interesting use of resources. A Chain Lightning targeting our Murktide Regent. Do we want to save our Murktide Regent, or is this a bait? I think we let this kill our Regent. That could be a mistake. But our opponent has basically given us 6 life for that. A Goblin Guide. Do we need to counterspell Goblin Guide? We know the top card of our library is a Strix, which we're kind of hoping to use to block the following turn. I think we're going to fire off a Brainstorm and try and find a land to put on top. We did not find a land to put on top. We did find a Daze, which is great for us. So put the Opposition Agent on the bottom, and then the Strix, we're drawing that in a second. Then we will Daze this Goblin Guide and return this Underground Sea. It could Fireblast us for an additional 5 damage here. They did not Fireblast us. Oh. Okay, so we'll play this Baleful Strix because we kind of just want to just get some more cards in hand, get this guy going. We do need to find a win condition. Like the Opposition Agent, I guess, can do that. It's a little bit slow. We will always be trading here. They're not going to offer the trade. Alright, we don't have a blue card in hand, but I think we need to ponder to see how we're progressing this game. If we find a black source, we can him to Tourach them. We did find a black source. We don't really want this Wasteland, but it's okay because it unlocks the rest of our hand. Our Force of Will is kind of just off here, which isn't really where I want it to be. But we can get a nice 2-for-1 potentially here. Now, our opponent might have some instants they're just going to cast. But these are things that aren't going to... Alright, so there's a Price of Progress. That's 4 damage. That's pretty bad news. And a Fireblast. Alright, so another 4 damage. Alright. So our opponent's got no cards now. But a lot of their deck is burn spells. So, a Lightning Bolt. That puts us to 1. So fetch lands are off. Force of Will is off. Oh no, they're going to shoot us. They're just going to attack us for 2. Right, so we can try and gobble this up next turn with an Opposition Agent. Or we can try and Anoint and Affliction it. depending on what our opponent's doing. Now, most of our opponent's draws in their deck will kill us. So we'll see what they draw. So we're going to play this guy and try and trade in combat. Because this means we also get a threat on board because we need to end the game as soon as possible because our opponent's got so many live draws here. Okay, drew a mountain. A wasteland that we knew about. We will play this wasteland so we can wasteland away one of our underground seas. Because if we draw a second wasteland, we can wasteland away both of them. And dodge a price of progress. Also, this gets us towards hard casting a Force of Will. Which if our opponent bricks this turn or draws a creature, is good for us. Alright, they drew a creature. So we get to kill this. A land would be really nice just so we can hard cast this Force of Will. Sure. So we can hard cast the Force of Will and we can double wasteland ourselves so price of progress doesn't kill us. Obviously we'd rather Force of Will it, but Lava Spike. Cast Force of Will. Blue, blue, 1. Alright. A few more draw steps to fade. We're not going to play this out because we don't want to get hit by a price of progress. We're currently insulated from price of progress. It's ugly, but alright, I drew a mountain. One more draw step for our opponent to fade. This is the turn our opponent draws a burn spell and kills us. Which is probably fair at this point. They've had some pretty bricky draws. Goblin Guide. Alright, they just didn't have it. So we picked up the 3-2 there. We did punt versus the Storm deck. We should have countered the Burning Wish instead of holding... I don't know what I was thinking there. My brain was thinking about so many things further down the line. I wasn't thinking about the thing right in front of me. And I just forgotten that I paid so much life in that game because... Yeah, I was like, oh, Storm is 6, I'm safe. My brain just completely bricked on that one. And that's on me. But we finished with a 3-2 positive record. Let's have a little chat about the deck. So, this deck has quite a lot of disruptive elements, obviously. However, I think there are some things I dislike about the deck. So, firstly, we're trying to cast Hymn to Tourach. We've got 4 Wastelands, 1 Volcanic Island, and 1 Island. These do not cast Hymn to Tourach. That is sometimes an issue, as we discovered. And Hymn to Tourach is a card that doesn't scale amazingly as the game goes on. Excuse me. I think I quite like Hymn to Tourach as a 3 of in decks, which sounds weird, but it's not something you necessarily need 2 of in a game a lot of the time. And having 3 means you can shuffle them away with Brainstorm, but having 4 means you're going to be more likely to draw them and draw multiples, which aren't always good. Now, sometimes multiples are good, and you're going to smash people with it. But sometimes you end up with your opponent hellbent, and you can't cast them. And also, we have quite intensive pips on some of our cards, like Baleful Strix as well. So having to cast Hymn to Tourach and Baleful Strix in one turn is a little bit tricky at times. I would also say this deck is a little bit threat light at times. Like, we're doing tempo things like Daze here, but we don't have like the early threats to capitalize on it. It's not like we're playing Daze and then we've got like a Delver pecking away or whatever. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like Death Shadow plays Daze and then it deploys its big threat like Murktide. But we only have 3 Murktides, which is like our big way of winning the game. But this also dies quite easily to Pyroblast post board, which means our attacks are a little bit weak in terms of post board. So I wouldn't mind seeing something like a Gurmag Angler in this list. Or even a Tombstalk if you want to go old school. Because I think having a threat that can't be Pyroblasted that's big might be nice. And just having another 4th big threat so it's easier to find them. Obviously, these pitch to Force of Will, which is obviously great. But they are not the best thing in terms of Pyroblast running around. But you do win the game very quickly once they're in play. So there is that. The scam line of Reanimate Grief is pretty good. But doesn't always get there. So I don't know, it's a bit of an all-in strategy from my perspective. I'm not really a fan of scam decks, but they are obviously quite powerful. And as you saw, sometimes you just take your opponent's shoulder in and they're going to have a really bad time. The Singleton Hullbreacher is a fine creature on its own, so we're not trying to do anything with it. I guess it does pair with our other Singleton of Faerie Mastermind, which did win us a game because of its ability, which is pretty funny. This is probably the thing that people most want to hear about, right? So this card is fine, I think, is how I describe it. It's all right against sort of blue pondery type decks because you can flash it in and maybe get a card out of it. And, you know, it's got evasion. It kind of beats down. It seems fine. It kind of fits in the similar slot to Mercurial Mercurial Spell Dancer, I think it's called, the 2-1 from the Phyrexia set, because there's a 2-1 guy that can accrue you some advantage. Now, the Mercurial Spell Dancer is always going to be unblockable, but obviously can't block flying creatures if you need to chump block something. But that is always going to be unblockable, and it's always going to give you cards, like as time goes on for the most part, whereas this one, if you want additional cards, your opponent either needs to do something to give you the additional card, or you have to pay mana and you draw a card that way. So I guess the question is, how likely are you going to be to have 4 mana? And also, when you draw your card, your opponent gets a card. So you're getting 2 cards and they're getting 1, but do you want your opponent to get 1 card in a format like Legacy? I'm not convinced by this card, is what I'm saying. I think there's definitely potential for it, and it's a Fairy Rogue, which is certainly interesting creature types that I might have a play with. Maybe we're going to see some Bitter Blossom Spellstart Sprite action with this guy. But I think giving your opponents new cards is not something I particularly want to be doing in my decks. Now, we do have a lot of 2-for-1s to try and offset that a little bit, and it's not an ability you have to activate. You can just use it as a pseudo-Narset where your opponent doesn't really want to draw additional cards with cantrips. So yeah, not certain about how I feel about this card yet. I might play a little bit more and see how it goes. It's not something that I thought would be particularly good going into the set, but having played it, it wasn't the worst. Obviously, it was just that one game where it really came up. So I don't know. I'm undecided on that one. As for the rest of this deck, I think it needs a little bit of tweaking in terms of I think 4 Hymns to Tourach is too many with the mana base we have here. And I wouldn't mind seeing another threat instead of that Hymns to Tourach. So swapping that for like a Tombstalker, Gurmag Angler, or something like that. Or even a Trine Nemesis isn't the worst, because you can send that guy around, would be pretty good. And I will say our deck seems very cold to Planeswalkers, right? We don't have a lot of creatures to pressure Planeswalkers, especially like Baleful Strix. Pecking away for 1 isn't going to do the job. Especially since a lot of Planeswalkers these days have got, you know, pluses that are going to be doing a lot of stuff to the board, like the Wandering Emperor or whatever. Or if someone's got a Jason the Mind Sculptor pecking away at 1, it's still going to be increasing overall. So I don't think it's good enough at beating Planeswalkers. Our removal, so we've got this Anoint with Affliction. We could be playing Eliminate, which also hits Planeswalkers. Now obviously it wouldn't hit the Calm, which is what sort of did us in. So maybe we need a thing to destroy Planeswalkers. That would be my main concern with how the deck list is configured. I don't think 1 opposition agent is necessarily worth it as a singleton. So maybe instead of the singleton opposition agent, because it's not like really overlapping with other stuff. It's not like we have 2 effects that are similar. We just have the 1 opposition agent. So maybe if we had something that can blow up Planeswalkers in that slot. And we could change the Anoint with Affliction to make it so maybe like 1 piece of creature removal and then 1 piece of something that blows up Planeswalkers. Maybe that's better. Like Narset is a fine card on its own. It just draws cards. It's just card event and does some stuff, and it's nice with the Faerie Mastermind if you can get it going. So I don't mind the other slots. I think that's where I would look at tweaking the sideboard. Opposition Agent is one of those cards for me that generally unimpresses. Now sometimes it just completely blows out a game and wins you the game, but often it doesn't do that much. So it's the floor and the ceiling are very far apart with that card, in my opinion. And as a singleton, I think I would just rather have a reliable piece of something to get rid of Planeswalkers. Quite what that one wants to be in this deck, I don't know. You could make arguments for Vampire Hexmage even, because we have Reanimate, so we can have reusable Planeswalker removal with it. But we're probably boarding out the Reanimates in a lot of those matchups anyway, although the Reanimate Grief line against a control deck early on is pretty strong, so maybe that's where you want to go. It's something that I haven't really seen people doing, but I think if you're specifically trying to get rid of Planeswalkers, that might be an option you can look at. But we're in red-black, so we could run like the one that makes them sacrifice. Is it like an artifact, a creature, or a Planeswalker? It's like a red-black one. Alternatively, you could just run the new Shoulder's Edict to make them sacrifice a Planeswalker, a creature, or a non-token, which also would give us... I guess the Eliminate is pretty good against Marit Lage as well, but you'd have the overlap of being able to kill the Marit Lage that the Anoint the Affliction has. So maybe you could have a couple of Shoulder's Edicts and 1 Anoint the Affliction. and sort of rely on your graveyard a bit more to kill the Euro. And then you sort of got overlapping slots, which I think is a little bit better. But that's pretty much all I have to say for this one today. The big lesson for today is look at your life total more often, right? Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much for watching today. Like, comment, subscribe, become a member of the channel. Reach out to me in the Discord link below if you want a donation deck, and we can sort that out. Become a member of the channel, etc., etc. Yeah, I think we've had a good day. This was an interesting deck. I can see why Tong Liu managed to win the event with it. Seems quite nice. It's got a lot of good tools in it. And if you miss some of the ways, you can get a bit disrupted by your own things. Like our mana base definitely did come back to bite us as well. We mulligan quite a lot with this deck. So I think if you can keep 7s regularly with this deck, it's pretty decent. It feels a bit like Death Shadow. I guess the question I would really like to ask actually before we sign off is why should you run this over Death Shadow? You could run a Death Shadow with the red splash here. And it'd be very similar. Like, is Hullbreacher, Faerie Mastermind? I guess the mana base is not hurting you as much, but it's a lot of overlap, I guess. I don't know. I'll have a think about this one, but the deck seems fine. It's playing good cards and good stuff, so it's pretty much a good stuff deck, and we got to showcase this little Faerie Mastermind today, which was fun. All right. This has gone on way too long, so I'm going to just say thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.